After our last review of a PC reselling online business, many of you sent links to this website, Lyte Gaming PCs, or Lyte Technology. Some of you thought the deals were terrible, others thought they weren't so bad. So let's get to the bottom of it. Just how good or bad are Lyte Gaming PCs? If you're sick of seeing that same Activate Windows watermark over and over, snag an OEM license from SCD Key. You'll have a fully activated OS in seconds, and you can kiss that watermark goodbye. And be sure to use menu offer code GSL for that sweet discount. So after a quick glance at some of these systems sold on their site, it becomes rather apparent that their angle is selling older, discounted hardware, often at least 2 or 3 generations old. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. This could be their competitive advantage, their unique approach to the market, but their prices need to reflect this. That is super important. So one of their more popular systems we'll use for demonstration purposes is the Lyte Wraith PC, which sports a Ryzen 3 1200, RX 570, 8 gigs of DDR4, modest storage, and a 500 watt PSU that is not named. The total price comes out to just under 600 USD, and their price is $649.99. So there's a lot going on here, and I want to break it down piece by piece. This approach is actually rather unique in the PC reselling space. The company breaks down the prices of each individual component, tells you what you could build the PC for, supposedly, give or take a few bucks, and then discloses a build fee of roughly $100. However, in this case, they're talking about half of that. So is $649 actually a decent price for this system? Let's do some math. As of February 17th, 2020, when I'm filming this video, the Ryzen 3 1200 is listed on Amazon for $65 new. It's actually fulfilled by Outlet PC, since these OG Zen chips aren't manufactured to the scale they once were when they launched. The RX 570 4 gig card sells new on Amazon for anywhere between 120 and 140 USD. That's a bit high, considering these cards are pretty old at this point and can be found frequently on eBay, thanks to the mining craze a few years ago, for less than $100. A 128 gig SSD costs around 20 to 30 bucks, or storage in that range. A 500 gig hard drive, same thing. An A320 motherboard at 69 bucks doesn't sound too unreasonable. 500 watt 80 plus PSU, usually priced around 40 to 50 bucks. Not sure which model they're quoting because again, they don't list the maker model, but at 65 bucks, I'd say that's a bit high. You could usually find decent ones from EVGA or Corsair in their price range for around 40 or 50 bucks. And I mean decent for the money. They're not gonna blow up your system for the most part. Now I'm gonna assume this PSU they list is nothing special, because if it was, they would bother actually listing the make and model. Either way, this one's a bit of a stretch. The Zalman case they're referencing, I couldn't find that anywhere on Amazon or Newegg. Turns out it's actually not a Zalman case at all. We'll talk about that later. But 69 bucks doesn't seem too unreasonable for a case. I'd rather them use like an NZXT H500 or a Fantex P350X though for the same price. Just something a bit more reputable in the case industry. It's subjective, but I'd like to see a more noteworthy brand in that space. So I wouldn't say the prices listed on the website are all that misleading. I mean, to any great extent, I guess. Sure, there are a few questionable things here and there, but I've seen far worse, so I don't want to spend too much time here. I do, however, recommend that you break these prices down anytime you see them spelled out for you like this, because it could be a way for those sites to justify their asking prices, especially if they're slipping in some sham figures to make you think that you're actually getting a good deal, when in reality, they're ripping you off. Due diligence, it's super important. They also charge $75 for Windows 10 Pro, but you can buy volume keys and the like for a few bucks, maybe 10, 15 bucks. You can find them even cheaper on eBay if you want to go that route. I'd never recommend anyone pay this much in a budget build for a Windows 10 license. Either way, I'm sure it's another way they bump their margins. I doubt these are retail keys because they're charging too little for them to be retail keys. I mean, these go for like 120 on Newegg. And if they're sharing keys between systems, then the markups are still huge. Next up, let's talk about this gaming demonstration. Lyte Technology links game footage captured supposedly on each of these PCs, which is a cool way for potential buyers to gauge performance. But I noticed that the numbers appeared to be a bit off in a few places, especially for this rig. In Modern Warfare, for example, a game that I play almost every day, this system's apparently pulling 70 to 100 FPS in 1080p medium to high settings with anti-aliasing, I think SMAA 1 times. And I just don't buy it. I mean, my personal rig with a 9900K RTX 2070 barely pegs 80 FPS with similar settings in 1440p, which isn't a huge step up. I mean, it's nothing like 1440p to 4K. And when I looked closer, sure enough, I realized the graphics card's frame buffer was hovering above 4 gigabytes in this case, actually around 6 gigabytes. And yeah, the card they listed on their site was only a 4 gig RX 570, so either they made a mistake and linked the wrong system, which I'm sure is the excuse they'll use regardless, or they're trying to present this system in a much better light than it actually should be. Either way, it's something subtle enough that I don't expect many would notice, and the only reason I did is because it's kind of my job to notice. I looked at a few other games, by the way, like GTA 5 and Fortnite they have listed here, and the numbers seem reasonable, but Modern Warfare was definitely a weird one. It just stuck out to me and I wanted to point it out to you guys as well. They're also apparently using a 2200G instead of a 1300 for this demonstration, which I know that swap is not, I mean, it's not gonna give you much of a change in frame rate at all, but it's not apples to apples directly, so just be cautious. The system also only uses a single 8 gig stick of RAM, which we know Ryzen specifically benefits from dual channel config, so that's kind of a bit unfortunate. And can we talk about these pictures of the alleged system? Now, it turns out this case is from a company called Dark Flash, not Zalman as stated earlier. And there's no mention of these RGB fans or custom CPU cooling. What is this? I'd imagine the company's just using the 1300 stock cooler. That's what I would do if I was building an ultra budget system. The cooler's fine, but there's no mention of it anywhere on this page. So why is it being pictured here in this light? And I'd be pretty disappointed if I bought this system thinking that it would look something like this here. Where's the beefy MSI motherboard? I mean, that isn't listed. What about this NVIDIA graphics card? That's not in the description. It's an AMD card. So they really need to sort out these discrepancies, and honestly, they should have had these hashed out prior to the site going live, and this just looks like a legal nightmare. But let's continue with another system. This one's definitely unique in its approach. Meet the Lyte Diamond PC. You'd think by the title alone it'd be a baller system, but it's actually only sporting a Core i5 3470, get that, a CPU that you can't really buy new anymore, and this is several generations old. And I doubt they're buying new unless they've been sitting on inventory for several years, which I also doubt. So they're probably getting these sourced from pre-built or just directly from third-party sellers on eBay. The 3470 sells renewed on Amazon for $58.98, which appears to be sort of what they're referencing here at $65 or so. But when I see words like renewed, I mean, that just looks like used to me. It's not new. The box was opened, it was probably used. How do you renew a CPU? And these CPUs can be found all day, by the way, on eBay for 20 bucks or less. So this list price is definitely a bit of a stretch. They've also got 8 gigs of DDR3 for 35 bucks. That seems fine. A GTX 1050 2 gig for 120 bucks. That's not astronomical, but I couldn't find any new 1050s, like just 1050s on Amazon. eBay does seem to have them for well under 100 bucks though, at least in a few cases. And again, you've got significant value in comparable AMD cards as well. So it doesn't really make sense from a seller's perspective to use a 1050 when you've got better value cards from the red team, actually cheaper as well. And so 120 bucks for a 1050 in 2020. Yeah, not buying it. As for the remaining specs, storage prices, those seem fine. Those are pretty consistent. The PSU also seems fine-ish, though the make and model, again, unlisted. Look, I really hate this about sites like these because you have no way of gauging the reliability of the unit. The motherboard's an OEM HP board, so that tells me they're likely sourcing these platforms from old pre-builts. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but when these are presented in a light that makes them seem new, I think it's a little bit shady. And I think this again justifies our occasional use, at least, of eBay to reference parts and prices. Also, for the games again, we've got mismatched specs. This Modern Warfare demonstrator, I don't know what it is with Modern Warfare, but they're using a 1050 Ti, which is a better card, and an FX 6300, which between that and like the 3470, probably not a huge difference, but the 1050 Ti, definitely a better card than the plain old 1050. Not liking what I'm seeing here. Same goes for Apex Legends. Same goes for Rainbow Six Siege. Again, I have no way of confirming whether or not it was deliberate, but these video links present this system in a much better light than it really deserves, which is either dishonest or negligent depending on who you ask. And again, grounds for some potential legal trouble in the future. And this trend continues into other systems listed on their site in case you're wondering. Their most expensive rig is the Lyte Overlord PC. These names are pretty funny. It's listed at $1,249, and at least one of these games uses a better gaming CPU than the one listed in the spec sheet. Actually a 3700X, I believe, instead of what's in the description, a 5820K. The other games don't mention a CPU at all, and thread counts were hidden in the stat windows conveniently, so there's really no way to confirm what CPUs are being used during these recordings, but I would like them to be way more transparent if possible. So if you can't already tell, I've got a few problems with this site. I don't think it's intentionally fraudulent. I don't think that there's inherently anything like alarming about this site, although there are a few discrepancies that I do wish they would address. The prices aren't too far off the mark. I definitely think things could be structured a bit better though. I appreciate the attempt at least at transparency when it comes to the build fee. They're just disclosing that up front. I like the parts list breakdown. I also like the idea of showing gameplay of the system in question, but I don't like the assumed prices, give or take. Some parts, like the storage is okay, but the other parts, I mean, $389 for a GTX 1080 that you can't even buy new anymore because it's Pascal, not Turing. On eBay, these cards are $300. Heck, for $400, you can get a used 1080 Ti that'll destroy the 1080. So, I mean, prices like this, that's kind of muddying the water a bit. Now, as for the CPU, the 5820K, several years old at this point. That's what, Haswell E, Broadwell E, something like that. I forget which one. Literally, you can find these on eBay for $100 or less. These are buy it now options, not just bids. And $75 again for Windows 10 Pro, that's a bit far-fetched. These are ways that Lyte technology likely increases its margins, so it does come down to more than just the $100 build fee they disclose. I mean, they may want you to think that they're only making $100 per build, but they're probably making much more than that off of each of these. So it does come across a bit disingenuous when you actually deep dive into the specs and where they're sourcing these things. I also don't like the mismatched pictures, right? The mismatched game footage. Both of these could spell legal trouble, not only for the company in the future, but also right now for anybody who already purchased one of these thinking they got the system that they thought they were gonna get. I would definitely straighten these things out before the site goes live again, assuming they take things down and sort it all out. It needs to be sorted. I just wanted this to come across as constructive feedback for the site owners should they see this video. I have no doubt they probably will after it goes live. And I encourage all of you to leave comments down below that they might check out regarding your take on their company, on Lyte technology, and what else you think they could do to improve the buying experience. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing, and I will catch you in the next one. My name's Greg. Thanks for learning with me. Boom.
My name's Nate.
I knew